सर के इंट्रोडक्शन जो है, ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन, उसके लिए ममता चौधरी मैम है, वो सर का इंट्रोडक्शन बताएं। ओके, आज मैडम हमारे साथ में जुड़े हुए हैं, उनके पास में माइक परमिशन नहीं है। लेट मी चेक फर्स्ट।
Am I audible, sir? Am I audible, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
A very good morning to all. On the behalf of GPC Barmer, I am welcoming Dr. Sumit Kalra. Today, we are very honored to have Dr. Sumit Kalra with us. Dr. Sumit Kalra is presently working as an assistant professor at IIT Jodhpur. Dr. Sumit was awarded his PhD from IIT Kanpur, and he also achieved his master's degree from IIT Kanpur. He completed his bachelor's degree from Punjab University. Dr. Sumit also have experience of working in Infosys. Dr. Sumit has deep understanding in the fields like software architecture, data analytics, and smart healthcare. Today, Dr. Sumit will help us to develop understanding on the topic security in software engineering. Now I will welcome Dr. Sumit to take the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mamta, for your kind introduction. And thank you, Prashantji, for your invitation and giving me opportunity to speak on this floor. Let me share my screen.
सर, हमारे जो पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं बेसिकली वो मल्टीडिसिप्लिनरी के हैं, मैकेनिकल के, केमिकल के, जितने भी डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं इंजीनियरिंग के उससे रिलेटेड हैं, एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर्स हैं और थ्रू आउट द कंट्री हैं वो जुड़े हुए हैं, यहाँ पर रिसर्च स्कॉलर्स भी हैं। तो सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग के अंदर जो सिक्योरिटी है, कोडिंग के अंदर क्या करते हैं उसके बारे में सर आपका सेशन शुरू करें।
So it should be in Hindi or English or
सर, जिसमें भी आप कंफर्टेबल हैं सर, नो इशू।
Okay, sure. So good evening everyone. As audience is from wide background, so I will try to keep my talk simple so that even non-CS background people can also understand. I hope slides are visible and
yes,
you can
sir.
also see the annotations. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
great.
That too also.
So let's see what is secure software engineering. And as you can see in the recent news, you might have heard about Log4j bug. And it's a small bug in a software. Even it's not related to the key functionality. The Log4j bug is related to your audit logs. So when any software runs, it creates the logs of key events which is happening, and this is used for debugging purpose, debugging or maintenance purpose. So we don't directly use this audit logs, log4j, as a key functionality. But what happened in log4j bug? any hacker can introduce some command, say command to get the hashed password. Through Log4j, which is a module for audit and logs, they can insert additional command to access the hashed password. Now, if you look around, almost all these web-based systems are actually using Log4j. And now, generally a software I will also talk about, it consists of multiple modules. And these number of modules can be easily around 10,000 in any real-time software. Say IRCTC or online income tax filing, they will have easily around 10,000 order of modules. And these modules are independent, and any of these modules can use Log4j. We don't know who has written this module, and whether it's using Log4j or not, it's also not quite clear. Now within a single module, you have further submodule, and those submodules can also be using Log4j. So although bug was simple and the patch was also simple, but what was complicated is finding in your large software where all you are using Log4j file itself. And it was not a straightforward problem. The reason is sometimes your software is not using Log4j, but you are using third-party services which in turn using Log4j. Now your software might be secure, but since you are depending on third-party services, your system might not be secure. So to manage these situations, we use some standard practices in software engineering, and I will touch upon some of those practices in this talk. So about us, we are part of Software Innovation Lab at IIT Jodhpur. There are a couple of PhDs who are working with us. And these are the recent work which we have done. And here we have taken into account the security aspects. I will briefly touch upon what we have been doing. So within the 1 month of the first lockdown last year in 2020, in April itself, we launched this telemedicine portal for service. And this portal it's still running, up and running. And we have provided support for Indian language. And there are multiple specialty doctors registered on the portal. More than 500 patients have revisited. But what is key part here from software perspective? We are providing audio video call services. Even you can upload multimedia data, your reports and all. Still with thousands of video calls simultaneously, our server consumption, compute resource consumption is not going above 10%. So your chats, video calls are actually, let's say peer-to-peer. Means server is not reading your chat. Your video calls are not going through server. It's a direct connection. And as you know, health record data have more stringent privacy laws. Even our National Digital Health Mission (NDHM) is talking about the stringent privacy policies for healthcare data. So keeping those aspects, we are able to achieve this much scalability with thousands of video calls, simultaneous video calls. Still our consumption is less than 10%. So that's a kind of standard software engineering practices can lead to you. Within 1 month, you can have secure and scalable system up and running. Then another secure system which we built and deployed at a state government hospital in Jodhpur. We deployed this AIoT based bed occupancy system. So whether any bed in hospital is occupied or not, so there are sensors which we deployed and that can give you real-time updates in which hospital your bed is empty. So what we are doing here is we are using AIoT based system. AIoT stands for artificial intelligence of things. So it's a mixture of AI plus IoT. Now, so our sensors are there in patient when they are lying on bed or sitting on bed, need to understand whether patient is there or not. If you keep some weight or heavy box on the bed, a simple sensor will understand that the bed is occupied. But that is not the case. So your bed is not occupied by a human being. So that intelligence is going inside the system. So that's about the another system which we deployed. And then I think this video is not running right now. Then we have AI driven chatbot. I will skip this part. I will keep other two systems in example because those two systems are also in real and physical world. So there are more chances of cyber physical security concerns. So this chatbot was built using knowledge model approach, and we come up with this knowledge model of on COVID-19 and black fungus mucormycosis using experts and domain experts, and they helped us in building such large semantic model which we are using for our chatbot. Okay. So let's understand what is IoT and how it can impact our digital and analog world, and where are software engineering concerns which we can easily handle to make them more secure. So in simple language, if I would like to explain IoT, I would say there are physical real world objects, and these objects want to talk to each other. So they are connected with each other. So there's a network using which they are connected, And now, like the way we are exchanging the information or knowledge, the same way physical object has to exchange. So there are two conditions. The first is data exchange. Say if I speak French and none of you understand French, then it's not a meaningful communication. So the data exchange format has to be common among any objects who want to interact with each other. Then not only format, the protocols. We know all of you are keeping yourself mute. If you don't follow the protocol, then we cannot communicate. So there has to be some protocols followed by both the objects. Now physical objects don't have capability to communicate as such. So they require help from software, sensors and actuators. So each physical object will have software which gives some intelligence or decision making support to that physical object. Sensors will let the physical object sense the environment, and actuator will allow them to act with the environment. Now if we look at the security concerns, each part have its own security challenges. Let's understand them. See, if data exchange format has to be common. Now, common format is easy to access. For example, say any Bluetooth device. Say you have a smartphone from different vendors, say Samsung, Apple, or say Nokia. Now, the Bluetooth of each of these mobile can interact with each other. How is it possible? Because they are following some standard protocols which makes them interoperable. Now there's a trade-off between interoperability and providing the security. Why? Because if we want different vendors to communicate with each other, we have to make these specifications open so that and make these specifications as a standard and make it public, open to public. Now once you know what is the specification, you can start using those specifications for uh, non-authorized purposes as well. So if data exchange format is known, the protocol is also public, you know how these two objects are interacting. So you can read in between and make the meaning out of it. So that is one possibility. Then regarding sensors, we know there can be these sensors are low cost, unreliable sensors, and their access can be easily be taken off if it's not being taken care by the proper software authentication and authorization. Same with actuators. So if someone remotely get access of these sensors and actuators, then they can spoof this physical object easily. And then software has large number of bugs. Generally, software is much more complex to manage, and its cost is also quite high. So I hope the picture is clear when we call it as a Internet of Things. Each component, each aspect of IoT system has its own different security concerns. Now, why I have picked example of IoT? The reason is this. What IoT is doing is based on Gartner's insight. So it's forcing organizations to re-architect their data and analytical capabilities, adopt new data management technologies and platforms, and also forcing to create new data governance policies. So IoT systems are generating lots of data. As like in the previous talk also, we have seen Google's activity tracker. Most of data is coming from your web browsing history or your Android phone. It's not only about Google, it's also about other vendors. Other vendors are also tracking this information. So, now these large amount of data is causing the organizations across world to re-architect. When you redesign something, the kind of test cases you need to run become much more complicated, because the older system was designed by someone else. Those people might not be there in the team anymore.
FM, ये हमारे पास
And changing a system, replacing it in real world brings its own challenges, like heterogeneity of the devices with which the system has to work. Then there's a large number of use case, business policies, government policies. All these are dynamic in nature, makes things much more complex. Okay. So having the background, so keep this IoT perspective in mind. And now we will try to understand how to, what kind of practices we should adopt while we want to develop a secure software. So there are various ways in which you can go for secure software engineering. But here I'm focusing on one aspect which is known as patterns. So what is a pattern? If we understand the general meaning, pattern is something which reoccur again and again, and it reoccur in the same fashion. So taking that further, in software engineering also we have patterns. We have architectural pattern, and we also have design patterns. We have coding patterns also. So there are various patterns which we generally use in software engineering. Let me also explain, since many of you are not from a computer science background. So what is engineering? Engineering is an ability to reproduce the outcome with some quality parameters. So science brings the principle, technology uses science to do something, and engineering make that technology feasible in reproducible manner. Fine. So in software engineering, when we say it's an engineering field, it means we need to develop software with certain quality and reproducibility. Any software engineering company should be able to reproduce this certain quality software again and again. So it's not by chance, like in science, some examples we have, by chance something happened and they discover the principle. By chance some jugaad happens and technology works. But engineering is not about jugaad or by chance. It's about making those things reproducible with certain quality again and again. So in software engineering also, we use software patterns which gives you certain solutions in a particular context. So if you look at the definition, it's a reusable solution for recurring problem and in a particular context. So if you see in 5 or 6 softwares, if they are talking about similar context and all of them are facing some problem and similar solution has been used for all these problems, then you can say the solution template is a pattern. So by definition, pattern, you cannot invent pattern, you can only discover them. Why? Because it's saying that a pattern is what? A reusable solution of a recurring problem in a particular context. So if you observe that there are 3 contexts, all of them have certain type of problem, and that problem is solved by this solution. So then you can designate it as a pattern. A single solution to a single problem in a particular context is not the pattern. And if you look at what is pattern, they are not finished design. You cannot use them as it is. It's a template. For example, this conference or FDPs, online meetings. So almost all the conference or FDPs have similar pattern, but you cannot use exactly the same conference for another conference purpose. We'll have different people holding different positions. So pattern is a template. It's not a finished design. So you still have scope to customize them. Then what advantage we get if we use the patterns? They speed up our development process, because we are talking about software engineering and we need to reproduce something again and again. By using speed up in the development process, you can have things much more faster in the market. Then we will also discuss, if we use these patterns, they can manage subtle issues or concerns and prevent any major problem occurring. For example, if we look at this organizing any workshop or FDP, if we learn from our experience from this FDP and use it for next FDP, definitely the next time your arrangement, your management is going to be much smoother than this one. Because you now have a set of template, you know, and this is the checklist I need to complete for today. This is a checklist I need to complete for second day. But if you don't create that template and just jump to the task, there are chances you're going to miss something which can cause major issues, and it can be large one also, not only always a small. Same with software engineering patterns. If you pay attention to patterns and use them in your software engineering, you can ensure that there will be certain security concerns which our software is managing. So you don't need to bother about small and small concerns in your software. It also improves the code readability. Why code readability is important? You might be reading in the news that attrition rate in IT companies are quite high. People generally work for 2 to 3 years in an IT company and then they switch over. Now, whatever they have developed for 2 to 3 years, they are not going to maintain that software. Someone else is coming and going to read it. So code readability increases if you use pattern. And as a third party person, suppose you want to use a software for some of your solution. Say you want to use Microsoft Teams for conference purpose, but you have say you have not decided the tool, so you have multiple choice: Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, or Cisco WebEx, and so on. Now, as a outsider, if you are concerned about particular feature, particular quality aspect of the service of the software, you can check whether the software developer has used the corresponding pattern to provide you certain quality or not. We'll understand more bit about the concrete examples. So for 10 minutes, bear with me with this pattern definition explanation. Now, what is pattern? How does it look like? It's a group of tactics. And what is tactic? Tactic is a smarter way to solve a particular thing. So let's understand quality pattern and tactic. So I think someone is unmuted. We can mute them. Thank you. So now tactic is a small unit and this pattern is group of tactics. And so let's compare in terms of quality. So security is quality which your software is giving you versus is a quality of performance. Now there is a trade-off between security and performance. Let's discuss this. Say you want to enter into the bank and there's only one main door of the building. Now if there's only single door, you cross that door and you are inside the bank. Now in this case performance is quite fast, but security concerns are high because there's only one door. If you have multiple doors with multiple guards maybe, and those guards are having some security equipments to check whether you are carrying any harmful material or not. Now, to close those security posts, you have to spend some time on each security post. What is happening? The moment you reach the bank, the moment you reach to the counter, it's a time-consuming process. So there is a trade-off between security and performance. I have taken an example which is non-computer science, but this is also true in computer science. More ways I implement for authentication or authorization, there's a performance overhead I need to bear. Like logging in Gmail. If you log in Gmail from new device, it now has provision to enable single secondary authentication from your mobile phone or your OTP. Now there's a security and performance trade-off. So as a software engineer, it's our responsibility to give best out of both. Of course, there's a trade-off, but it's not that we have to always compromise one and provide one. So there's a middle path which we need to pick. Now, when we talk about tactics, they don't bother about these trade-offs. Why? Because this tactic is smaller unit and they only focus on particular aspect. The one tactic will only focus on improving the performance or improving the security. Now, these tactics in isolation is not useful for us. We cannot leave performance unattended and only provide very high security using security tactics. So we need to manage this trade-off between tactics of security and tactics of performance. And combination of these tactics, bundling multiple design decisions are part of pattern.
They should be technically
so
sound.
Single pattern will have multiple tactics.
वो technically sound हो.
And some tactic will provide security, some may provide performance, some say provide availability or reliability or maintainability, extendability. So there are so many quality attributes which we can talk about. So the key part here is key takeaway for you is as a security aspect or any overall quality, we should pay attention to patterns, not individual tactic. Because individual tactic is going to give you local maxima. If you want to have global optimization, you need to go for patterns. In terms of what they give us is implementation tactics will tell how to solve the particular problem, whereas pattern will give you when to combine multiple solutions and apply them. So, like by definition, patterns talks about the particular context and problem
हमारी कोर कॉम्पिटेंसीज है जिन एरियाज में हम काम कर रहे हैं जिस तरह से हम स्ट्रांग है ये
so context gives you when to apply the pattern. Problem gives you the reason why you want to apply the pattern, and solution is what you actually apply, and you get this trade-off management. You handle multiple quality attributes together.
We are able to take any sort of challenges.
From now onward, if you have option to choose one software over another software, so you prepare the list of quality you want from them. Look at the corresponding patterns which are good to handle those multiple qualities and check whether the software are actually implementing those patterns or not. Now, how do you get whether a particular software is implementing that pattern or not? So generally, all these softwares have
it is 5.
some amount of
पांच
documentation
की
with
संख्या हमें
them
मिलती है,
in
इसका
which
मतलब
they
हर
talk
पांचवा
about their
व्यक्ति इस
features.
धरती पे भारतीय है।
So those features,
और
if
हम ये
you
चाहते हैं
go
कि जो
through, you
भारतीय
can
युवा
easily
जो
get
हमारी
whether
पारिवारिक जो
they are
जो
using
एक
some
ढांचा है,
standard
हमारा वैल्यू
patterns or
सिस्टम है, हमारा संस्कारों
the
का
software
सिस्टम है,
looks
हमारी टीम
random
लीडिंग एबिलिटीज
to
है,
you.
हमारी कोर कॉम्पिटेंसीज है, जिन एरिया में हम काम कर रहे हैं,
Okay.
जिस तरह से हम स्ट्रॉन्ग है, ये हमारे बच्चे
So
दुनिया में जाके
taking
प्रूव कर पाए
the
इस चीज को
previous
कि वी
context
इंडियंस आर
definition
समथिंग
further,
डिफरेंट।
what is
हम भारतीय
architecture
बच्चे
pattern?
विशेष
In
हैं।
software
हम ये चाहते
context,
हैं हर शिक्षक
it's a
से
reusable
कि वो ऐसा
solution.
योगदान करे
So
कि
you
बच्चों
write
को इस
code
तरह से
once,
ओरिएंट करे कि
so
वो
it
सिर्फ
is
भारत
broker
के लिए
code,
नहीं, दुनिया के
and you
किसी
can
भी
use
कोने
this
में जाके
broker
ये
code
प्रूव
in
कर पाए
multiple
कि
scenarios
we
again and
Indians
again.
are something
So
different.
it's
We
a
are able to
reusable
take any
solution
sort of challenges.
to a
जो भी
commonly
दुनिया
occurring
के
problem.
अंदर, जगत के
So you have
अंदर
multiple server to be
जितनी
maintained,
जनसंख्या है, उनके चेहरों पे खुशी
which you
लाने
can
वाले हम
coordinate
भारतीय
using
एक स्ट्रॉन्ग
broker.
पिलर है। इस तरह के
So it's
बच्चे अगर
a
हम तैयार
recurring
करके
problem.
भेजते हैं, then certainly it will be a
And in a
great
given
satisfaction to
context.
all of us.
So this
और
is in the
हम ये चाहते
context
हैं
of
कि ये जो बच्चे जहाँ पे भी जाते हैं,
web
जहाँ पे ये
application.
काम करते हैं, जो हमारे देश के एम्बेसडर्स बन के जा रहे हैं, वो उस काम जहाँ पे कर
So
रहे हैं, जहाँ
whatever you
कंट्रीब्यूट
can
कर रहे
see
हैं,
in
उसके
this
बदले में जो
diagram,
डॉलर्स मिल रहे हैं,
this
वो
figure
डॉलर्स
is
भारत में
actually
आए।
patterns.
ये युवा जस्ट लाइक ह्यूमन बीइंग्स हैं, और ये ह्यूमन बीइंग
This is
अगर
client
स्ट्रॉन्ग
server
ह्यूमन रिसोर्स में
pattern.
बनते हैं, वैल्यू
This is
बेस्ड एजुकेशन
broker
अगर अपन प्रोवाइड
pattern.
करते हैं उनको,
This is model
एक
view
संस्कार की
controller
शिक्षा इनको देते हैं, और वो संस्कार उनके
pattern.
काम में दुनिया के हर कोने में अगर रिफ्लेक्ट होते हैं, और उसके
Then
बदले में जो डॉलर्स
this
आए,
is abstract factory pattern. This is layered pattern. This is blackboard pattern. So there are various large number of patterns in software engineering. These are only some which is being shown here. Now if I connect this from your previous session, in the previous session they talked about OSI layers or TCP IP layers, network layers, physical layer, data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session layer, application layer, right? So there are multiple layers, and actually the architecture of our network is layered pattern. So you know your network is using layered pattern, and if you refer to the literature and find out what are the advantages of using layered pattern, you can simply translate those advantages in your network part also. So like I will briefly touch upon the kind of advantages you get from these patterns. So this is again some list of popular patterns which generally being used in software engineering. So layered pattern, client server, master slave, 5 filter, broker. I'm not going into detail of each of them, but we'll look at some examples. So layered pattern, which you can connect with your OSI layer or TCP IP layer. So what is this layer architecture? It's a very simple pattern, but when we discuss its advantages, you will realize, yes, this is kind of surprising that a simple pattern, how it can result into so many benefits. So what this layered pattern says, it organizes the components of an application into horizontal logical layers or physical layers. So these are horizontal layers, not vertical layers. And then a higher layer can use services in a lower layer, but not the other way around. This is the most important part in layered architecture. So you can see the arrow is unidirectional. They are not going upward. So what does it mean that the higher layer uses the services of lower layer, and this layer will use the services of further lower layers. So it's not upward, it's only one-way movement, not two-way movement. Now we should ask question why there is only one-way movement allowed. The answer is suppose if there is any change, if you change this layer, changing this layer means what? You modified the program, you may handle some bugs, you add new functionality, or you remove any extra functionality which was not being used anymore. So if you change this layer, as long as the interface is same, you don't need to do any changes in top and bottom layer. Even if there's a change in the input requirement, if the interface also changed, you only need to update the just immediate upper layer. So if there are 5 layers and if I change the 4th layer, I may only need to modify slightly the 3rd layer. 2nd layer, 1st layer are not affected at all. So that is the advantage of layered architecture, layered pattern. Another part is it also not, if you pay attention, it's also not talking about bypassing any layer. This is also not allowed. If nth layer want to use the services of first layer, it has to go through all n-1 layer. So any changes done here will not directly impact the lower layers. It will only affect the immediate lower layer. So these are the two benefits which we are getting if we restrict our movement one way. Fine. So layered pattern should be clear, and now you can think of why we are using layered pattern in our network. Because you can independently change your router as long as they are accepting a standard interface. You can replace your adapters, or you can replace your physical layers, or you can replace the routing devices. So all these are advantages happening due to layered pattern. So this is example of layered pattern. It's a typical multi-tier application. And this is your OSI model, which is using layered pattern. And once you know they are using layered pattern, you are also certain to some extent that what kind of qualities you are going to get. So another pattern I will just briefly touch upon is broker pattern. So broker, all of us understand what they are in real life. So take example of Google search. Google search engine is actually being managed by approximately 20 servers. So 20 server addresses are there, which is handling Google search engine. And anytime you enter any text box inside the Google search engine, it tries to find out which server is least loaded. It tries to find the entity which is trying to find out can be a broker. So this broker is allowing you to have multiple servers and intelligently decide which server the next request should go to. And going to particular server, there can be large number of constraints which broker need to take care. For example, say your requirement is like no server consumption should go above 80%. So now you have particular server and you need to get result in say less than 2 second time. You need to check which one is overloaded. You find one is not overloaded. The next request is bind to server 1. So that is the task of broker. So it can be used to structure distributed software system. It also decoupled components and interact with remote service invocation. So brokers also works at the back end. So these are 2 examples of patterns. This is pictorial view. So what is benefit of broker component? So the broker component is responsible for coordinating and communicating with client-side proxy, bridge, server-side proxy, server. So whatever is being maintained by your system, if there are multiple services, you can use brokers to easily identify the services. So let's understand. So that was about pattern. So I'll finish it up in next 15 minutes. So there are some requirements in the cyber physical system. CPS stands for cyber physical system here. And the context is multi-agent system. So there are some key requirements. Like application has to be independent in multi-agent system. So what does it mean is that the protocols and messages which MAS will be using, MAS stand for multi-agent system. It should be independent of a specific application. So you have clear, you have clarity about the protocols and messages which are going to be part of multi-agent system, but they are generic enough so that they are also reusable. Now, level independence in automotive industry, it's a standard term. So here they are referring that all levels of automation should be available. So there should not be any dependency about the automation level and using of these patterns. So some software is highly automated, other is not. Irrespective of that, you should have some implementation. Then another key feature is platform independent. So platform independent allows you to integrate and implement your program in some other production setting easily. Robustness against errors. So it says that even if any error occurs, it should go for graceful shutdown. Then decentralization of mass. It means that even the mass is distributed over network, and now we want to upgrade that network. So there will be temporary network connection loss, but decentralization allow you to have backup of the data. But the another concern is if you want it in real time, it may not be possible. And keeping that IoT context, let's also look at what are the requirements from Industry 4.0 perspective. So, like we talk about models and graph models. So, in this Industry 4.0, whoever is having any kind of model or submodel, they should support various engineering disciplines. It does mean that particular model or particular pattern should be supporting, say, different verticals, say oil and gas or LPG vertical. Suppose it's a petroleum industry, so you can have multiple replicas. Then system boundary for submodel should be clearly defined. Then it's a nestability principle. What does it say is that any document or any Industry 4.0 example will have different level of organizing units, and each unit can come up with their own different software piece of code. If all of them follows particular pattern, then it will be available across multiple levels. And this is like how to track the digital activeness of the systems in Industry 4.0. So you can have virtual representation or say digital twin of sensors or anything which can allow you to integrate with the digital domain securely. And functional properties in terms of Industry 4.0 is It talks about setting up of meta model. Why we require meta model? Because our focus here is not to build functionality as such, but to build high quality software. So it's a model of model as such. So based on the requirement, we'll quickly go through the kind of patterns which we are using. So pattern name as it is given here is agent@PLC. Now type of pattern is what? It's a multi-agent system implementation concept for faulty sensors or actuators. So if sensors are generally faulty or they have wear and tear after some uses. So to have multi-agent system on top of SAS, so what this pattern do? So there's a particular schema in which we generally define a pattern. So we define category, we define type, we define name and description. So categories like flexibility, reliability, or reconfigurability. The type of pattern is full faulty sensors or actuators. So we are talking about multi-agent system, so it's a context for us. And reconfiguration of faulty devices is kind of recurrence. And using this recurrence and context, you can come up with a solution and see whether it's occurring again and again. And what is the context? So the context is in agent@PLC, the solution adapts the actual values with appropriate changes instead of using worst case value in predefined replacement. So we are saying there's a faulty devices in multi-agent system in our cyber physical system, and we are having this pattern which we have deployed named agent@PLC. And at PLC itself, programmable logic controls, that PLC itself an agent is sitting, and this agent, what it's doing, it's taking care of faulty behavior, it's correcting the behavior dynamically. So it appropriately changes the faulty values. It's little time consuming process because we need to check what is the correct value, how to get that correct value, because sensor anyway giving you not that correct value. So during this time, process is still open, but it reduces, it takes some time but reduces the faulty behavior at reduced precision. The precision may not be as actual, it's a reduced one, but instead of looking for replacing the faulty device, you use software solution to predict the actual value in case of prediction failure. That's what this pattern is talking about. And this is how does it look like when you draw it. So there are different modules. These modules are talking to each other. And you have physical environment also, where you receive input and spit output. So there's another design pattern for multi-flow system, which is plug and play nature. And the category, the advantages we get is reconfigurability and flexibility. The type of pattern is agent control approach, and pattern name is plug and produce of MFS. MFS stands for multi-flow system. And the description is there are 5 sub-agents we will see in the next slide. And the context area is logistic domain. Now let's see what is this agent control approach is. So like it mentioned, there are 5 sub-agents. So you can see 5 sub-agents. And they are talking to each other. They are sharing the application data. As well as other data, metadata. And what does it do is it's a reactive pattern, so it not do anything in advance. If something happens, then it will react to the situation. So in this multi-flow system plug and play case, there were 2 choices whether to implement the controller code on individual PLC or have a controller at other end, and it can coordinate with all the modules. So flow in both the cases are slightly different. Sorry. Yeah. So there are some other couple of pattern like self-control architecture. It's a flexibility pattern. So it's agent based or SCT, self-control technique based control architecture. It also contains of 5 sub-agents. Let's look at these as architecture self-control. So you have multiple agents which are talking to each other. And then you can exchange knowledge information between resource planning and reconfiguration. So this is like self-controlled architecture. So it's a hybrid in nature because the self-control architecture is mixing the previous 2 patterns. Then there's another design pattern for resource access. So when should you provide resource access to particular entity? So you can use this pattern for giving resource access to only designated units. I'm not diving deep into the technique as time is getting over. And I have to actually go to another meeting. So there are multiple agents which are communicating with each other. And if you decide to use design pattern for resource access, what you do, you implement these agents in your software and make them communicate the way it's being shown here. And this gives you designated advantages as compared to if you don't use this set of design and just try to implement any way using which you implement the resource access. So here what it's doing is sub-agents types are executing negotiation process based on the contract protocol. So there are smart contracts which can be defined with the agents, and they can use it to have the interaction among each of them. So in conclusion, as a non-CS background, the takeaways are: focus on design patterns, don't ignore them. Although you don't know how software is being built, how they have written the code, but at least design patterns are easy to understand, and you can check and use them, or you can use them as a criteria to judge which software is more suitable for you. So multi-agent system developers can also use design patterns so that they can ensure certain qualities. And these multi-agent system patterns can be used to provide cyber physical system security aspect. So there are large number of approaches which can be good or bad. The design patterns, the way we are documenting them, help us in getting initial information about the pattern, and we can now easily see when to apply which pattern, when to use which pattern, because if you look at the way pattern are being described, are defined, labeled as a category, type, name, description, context area, and the kind of architecture they support, and the processing. So with this limited description, you can easily identify which pattern is more suitable as compared to other. So with that, I would like to end my talk here. There are some references you can refer to. I will share my slides with Dr. Prashant. So thank you all. Any question, any doubt?
Thank you so much, sir. Basically, chat and mic both are disabled, so
Okay.
people cannot actually communicate. So interaction is less for the first day, and tomorrow I will try to overcome from this technical glitch. So your session was really wonderful. I would like to call upon Mamta Chaudhary ma'am to have some conclusion about the today's session. Mamta Chaudhary ma'am, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sumit Kalra, sir. Today, sir, discuss about the topic AIoT, that is artificial intelligence of things. Sir, clear the idea about how we can improve using the IoT well-being, enhance our services and optimize our assets, also conserve our resources and reuse our products. Then, sir, come to the coding part, that rather than making patterns, we can go to the tactics. Then, sir, discover how patterns are discovery, not the inventions. Then, sir, come to the another topic, layered pattern, that how we can use layered pattern. If we go in the sequential pattern, then we have to change our code again. But if we go in the layered pattern, then if we are removing only one layer, then only the upper one layer is to be changed, and other than layer upper than that will not be changed. Then sir, explain us how the broker pattern will go. A broker pattern is basically a tool which comes between the client sides, client cookies, servers, and server cookies. And then, sir, enlighten the idea of Industry 4.0. Then, sir, also explain us multi-agent systems. We are very thankful to Dr. Sumit Kalra, sir, for better making our understanding in the topic of software engineering. Thank you, sir.
सर बहुत ही शानदार आपका सेशन रहा है सर। बेसिकली क्या है कि साइबर सिक्योरिटी की बात बिना सिक्योरिटी और वो भी सॉफ्टवेयर के अंदर, क्योंकि साइबर जो वर्ड है में हम कहीं ना कहीं किसी न किसी कोड के थ्रू ही क्या है कि साइबर से कनेक्ट हो रहे हैं, चाहे ब्राउजर की कोडिंग हो, चाहे हमारा कोई ना कोई वेब एप्लीकेशन हो, चाहे हमारा एंड्रॉयड एप्लीकेशन हो। हर किसी जो एप्लीकेशन है फ्रंट एंड है उसके पीछे कहीं ना कहीं कोडिंग है। और यदि हम बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस जो है सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग की अगर अडॉप्ट नहीं करेंगे तो डेफिनेटली हम किसी न किसी सेक्रेट हमारी जो सिक्योरिटी थ्रेट है उससे घिरे रहेंगे। तो सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर्स की रेस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी बहुत जरूरी है कि वो ऐसी जो प्रैक्टिसेस हैं, बेस्ट जो प्रैक्टिसेस हैं सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग की, उनको अडॉप्ट करें ताकि हम सेफ रह सकें, सिक्योर रह सकें। तो बहुत ही शानदार सर आपका सेशन रहा है और हम जरूर चाहेंगे कि आगे आने वाले समय भी हम आपके साथ में ऐसे सेशंस हैं डेफिनेटली और भी करें सर। So once again, thank you so much, sir. Due to any reason, principal sir is not able to connect right now. Otherwise, they also want to have some chat with you also, but they are not able to connect today.
Sure, no problem. So it was wonderful having session with, like, I tried to explain the software things to non-CS audience. So I
That
hope
was a
I was
big
able
challenge
to.
for you actually.
Yeah.
डेफिनेटली सर। सो एक्चुअली क्या है कि देखो 7 दिन का जो एफडीपी सेशन है वो भी मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी में करना अपने आप में चैलेंज था, लेकिन क्योंकि इतना इमर्जिंग एरिया है, इतना मतलब डिमांडिंग चीज है कि वो सबको बताना जरूरी है। इसलिए क्योंकि और लर्निंग है वो तो कभी भी रुकती नहीं है। तो अगर टेक्निकल साइड से है, सब टीचर्स हैं, फैकल्टीज हैं, तो उनको अपडेट करना जरूरी है। इसीलिए ये ओरिएंटेशन रिफ्रेशर प्रोग्राम भी होते हैं, तो उनको थोड़ी बहुत सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियरिंग का नॉलेज भी होना बहुत जरूरी है। तो फिर भी सर आपने बहुत अच्छे शब्दों में, सरल शब्दों में सर बताने की पूरा प्रयास किया, और मैं मुझे ऐसा लगा कि ये नो डाउट बहुत ही अच्छा सेशन आपका रहा है सर।
Thank you,
थैंक यू
sir.
सर, थैंक यू वंस अगेन सर। तो जितने भी पार्टिसिपेंट्स हमसे अभी जुड़े हुए हैं उनके लिए न्यूज है कि जो हमारा जैसा कि AICTE-ISTE की मैंडेट है, हमें रोज का एक एग्जाम भी लेना है, उसको क्लियर करना है। तो आपका जो एग्जाम लिंक है वो अभी ओपन हम शॉर्टली बस जस्ट कर ही रहे हैं। अब उसके लिए 2 कंडीशन है कि जब ये लिंक ओपन हो जाएगा उससे 15 मिनट के अंदर अंदर ये हम इसको बंद कर देंगे। इसमें केवल 10 क्वेश्चन होंगे, बेसिक आपकी डिटेल आपको फिलअप करनी है, और 4:25 PM तक हम ये सेशन है इसको बंद कर देंगे। 4:30 में इसको टाइम को एक्सटेंड कर देता हूं, लगभग 4:10 ऑलरेडी क्योंकि हो चुके हैं, तो लगभग 4:30 तक ये वैलिड रहेगा। दूसरी चीज, ये जो व्हाट्सअप हमारा ग्रुप है उस पर ये ऑलरेडी शेयर्ड है। अगर किसी कारण से आप उस ग्रुप में नहीं जुड़े हुए हैं तो हमारी इंस्टीट्यूट का जो वेबसाइट का पेज है जो कि अभी आपके सामने स्क्रीन पर है, उस पर आप विजिट कर सकते हैं और वहां पर भी आपको ये एग्जाम का लिंक वो मिल जाएगा। साथ में मैं हमारा जो शेड्यूल है उसको भी मैं शेयर करना चाहूंगा, जो हम आगे आने वाले दिनों में है, जिसको हम जिन टॉपिक्स को हम कवर करेंगे वो अभी तक पार्टिसिपेंट्स को साझा नहीं किए हैं, तो वो भी आपके सामने अभी स्क्रीन पर है। आज का हमारा जो सेशंस है वो हो चुके हैं, कल भी इसी प्रकार से सेम जो यूआरएल है, वेब लिंक है, उससे सभी लोगों को जुड़ना है। और कल के जो हमारा सेशन होएगा यानी सैटरडे का, वो डेस्कटॉप, मोबाइल एंड ईमेल जो सिक्योरिटी है, तो सेकंड ये हमारा सेशन रहेगा। उसके बाद में डेटा ऑब्फुस्केशन हमारे डॉक्टर फरीद अहमद जी MNIT से आएंगे, मनिंदर भुई जी कल आएंगे। तो कल के जो 3 सेशन है वो यथावत है, किसी भी प्रकार का चेंज नहीं है। यदि कोई चेंज हुआ तो मैं आपको डेफिनेटली जरूर बताऊंगा। तो हमसे जुड़ने के लिए बहुत बहुत सबका धन्यवाद। आप इससे लर्निंग है उसको और आगे बढ़ाएं, हैप्पी लर्निंग। अपना एग्जाम दें, आज की अटेंडेंस है वो भी होनी है। तो सबका बहुत बहुत हार्दिक अभिनंदन, और आज के प्रोग्राम में जुड़ने के लिए link is open. Okay, link is open. I got confirmation from my technical team. You may please proceed.